¿Puedes aprobar este examen de los tiempos verbales en español? Watch until the end because I can almost guarantee you won't get the last one right. Translate these into Spanish. If 3 seconds isn't enough for you, feel free to pause the video. I speak. Yo hablo. You don't need to use the subject pronoun yo if you don't want to. It's optional and just provides context. So you could just say hablo instead of yo hablo. It's very common that native Spanish speakers will not use subject pronouns like yo, tú, él, ella, and so on. You guys live or you all live. Ustedes viven. Remember that ustedes means you guys or you all. In this case, it might make sense to use our subject pronoun ustedes. That's because if we were to just say viven, that could potentially mean they live, coming from ellos viven. So viven, according to the context of our sentence, could be referring to ustedes or ellos. That's why context is king in Spanish. They eat. Ellos comen or just comen. Ellos can represent only males or both males and females. Technically, if there were 99 females and 1 male in a group, you would use ellos. We are going to see. Vamos a ver. This is called the informal future. Now, you may have translated this as veremos, which would mean we will see. So the translation is slightly different. Veremos, we will see. Vamos a ver, we are going to see. The informal future is the easiest way to speak in the future tense. In fact, in Latin America, 90% of the time, this is what we use to talk about things in the future. The formula for this is simply ir plus a plus infinitive. Memorize that and you'll instantly be able to speak in the future tense. I like water. Me gusta agua. In Spanish, the verb gustar is conjugated based on the direct object of the sentence. In this sentence, agua is the direct object. Therefore, we would say gusta instead of saying something like gusto. So technically, in this case, the water is performing the action of pleasing or liking to me. I wouldn't say gusto because it sounds like I'm performing the action of pleasing or liking. That's why we say gusta instead of gusto. Inside the Fluent Spanish Speaker Academy, we do fun quizzes just like this one for our members. Our goal is to help you have a 10-minute conversation in Spanish without feeling nervous. You can learn more about the program by clicking the link in the video description or by going to SpanishWithNate.com. Now let's see how you do with these. I thought about making the intermediate and advanced sections multiple choice, but I wanted to challenge you. Let's dive in. I went to the movies yesterday. Fui al cine ayer. In this case, we say fui, which is the preterite tense. Remember that the preterite is for one-time actions in the past, whereas the imperfect is for ongoing actions in the past. I wasn't going to the movie theater. I went to the movie theater. Also, remember, when we have a preposition like a combined with the masculine article, in this case, el, we're going to combine them. So instead of saying a el cine, we will just say al cine. That's why we say del taco instead of de el taco. He was sick for 3 days. Estuvo enfermo por 3 días. I see it all the time. Students really struggle with estuvo versus estaba and era versus fue. In this case, we use estuvo because we are talking about a specific amount of time. Therefore, we use the preterite. And we wouldn't use the verb ser, meaning to be, because ser is used for permanent things, whereas estar is used for temporary things. So he's not going to be sick forever. It's a temporary condition. Therefore, we use estar. I hope you arrive early. Espero que llegues temprano. When we have a phrase like espero que, this will trigger the use of the subjunctive mood. So instead of saying llegas, we will say llegues. Remember, the subjunctive is not a tense, it is a mood. In Spanish, we have three moods. The imperative, which is used for commands, the indicative, which is used for things of fact, and is the one we use the most, and the subjunctive, which is used for things of doubt. It can also be used for opinions and feelings. So in this case, just because I hope you arrive early doesn't mean that it's actually going to happen. Therefore, we use the subjunctive. Espero que llegues temprano. They knew the answer. Supieron la respuesta. Now, if you had said sabían la respuesta, that's okay as well. Sabían la respuesta means they knew the answer for a long amount of time. They already knew it. Supieron la respuesta means they found it out. They knew the answer, or they realized the answer. I'm looking for someone who speaks Spanish. Busco a alguien que hable español. You could also say, estoy buscando a alguien que hable español. Remember that the present simple, in this case, busco, can also be used as the ing equivalent in English. So, eating, laughing, crying. If something is happening now or in the near future, it's common that native speakers will use the present simple. A common example of this is the idea of voy. If your mom calls you to go into the other room, you could yell out, voy, I'm coming, or I am going. Also, notice how hable is not habla. That's because it's not a guarantee I will find someone who speaks Spanish, and therefore we have to use the subjunctive. So, hable instead of habla. Now let's look at some tricky ones. If I had more time, I would travel more. Si tuviera más tiempo, viajaría más. This is a hypothetical situation, and therefore we use the imperfect subjunctive. For me, mastering the imperfect subjunctive was one of the hardest things to get down in Spanish. Also, it's very common that the imperfect subjunctive will play with the conditional tense. So, tuviera, the imperfect subjunctive, and viajaría, the conditional. I doubted that they were telling the truth. Dudaba que dijeran la verdad. In this case, because there is doubt, literally dudaba, we are going to use the subjunctive. Because I'm speaking in the past tense, we need to use the imperfect subjunctive. I wish I had arrived earlier. Ojalá hubiera llegado antes. You could also say, ojalá hubiera llegado más temprano. When using the word ojalá, we will use the subjunctive mood. Ojalá actually comes from Arabic. You may have heard the word Allah, meaning God, in Arabic. So, in Spanish, ojalá means God willing, or I hope, hopefully, I wish. Remember that Spain is very close to Arabic-speaking countries, like Morocco. So we have many words in Spanish that actually come from Arabic, like azúcar or almohada, for example. If I had known, I wouldn't have gone. Si hubiera sabido, no hubiera ido. It's very common to use hubiera for past hypothetical situations. A common thing you'll hear in Spanish is me hubieras dicho. You should have told me. I didn't think it would be so difficult. No creía que fuera tan difícil. You could also use pensaba. No pensaba que fuera tan difícil. When we use something like no creo or no pienso, we will use the subjunctive. So the same is true in the past tense. In this case, we can't say era. We have to say fuera, because according to my reality, I didn't believe that it would be so difficult. Tricky stuff. And finally, a bonus sentence that I can almost guarantee you will not translate correctly. Even if he spoke to me, I wouldn't change my mind. Aunque me hablase, no cambiaría de opinión. Now, I just want to throw you for a loop here. In reality, most people do not use the idea of hablase. We would just say hablara most commonly. So you could say, aunque me hablara, no cambiaría de opinión. Something like hablase, fuese, fuere is more common in traditional literature or maybe even legal contexts. But in the real world, when you're out and about, you're probably never going to hear this. How many did you get right? Leave a comment down below. Click the like button and subscribe now if you haven't already. Go to SpanishWithNate.com or click the link in the video description to join our Fluent Spanish Speaker Academy. Hasta luego!